You're going to have to wait 3 days, and you can come on Thursday at such and such a time or Saturday at such and such a time. That's going to cut down.
Take care. Be safe.
Well, class resumes August 24th at the small seminary on the Atlanta University Center, but you won't find any students on the campus. I spoke to an ITC student and the school president about the tools they're using to have an entirely virtual semester.
As a mother, a Fulton County High School teacher, and a staff member at Sankofa United Church of Christ, Connie Moran does everything she can to avoid exposure to COVID-19.
I don't want to take any chances.
Since she's also a seminary student, she was grateful to hear the Interdenominational Theological Center will hold the entire fall semester on a virtual platform.
I was absolutely thrilled.
Moran is one of the 300 students who, along with faculty members, will receive a leased iPad from Apple that's loaded with apps and other programs to foster a virtual but comprehensive school environment when class resumes August 24th.
So all of us being on the same exact platform lets us talk the exact same language. And if we're talking the same language, we can be more of a community. I did take a class over the summer, and I felt like I was still part of the classroom and had not distanced myself away from people, but I wasn't putting myself at risk either.
There will be no normal to go back to.
The risk of exposure to COVID-19 is what prompted ITC President Dr. Matthew Williams to close the campus at Atlanta University Center in March and extend virtual learning throughout the rest of 2020.
With there not being an antiviral available, not being a vaccine available within the coming year, the well-being of our people is our highest priority. Bottom line for us is that we don't have to choose between the health of our people and providing quality access to theological education.
An Emory University student is taking action to help patients with serious medical conditions during this COVID-19 pandemic. So if you have an old cell phone or a tablet, she says she could use your help. Fox 5's Brian Hill has more on how she's using technology to keep people safe.
Telehealth access for seniors just started here in Georgia. The state lead tells me she needs roughly 100 of these devices, but right now all she has is about 10.
There's so many people suffering through chronic illnesses, and they have to be at home. They cannot leave.
As coronavirus cases continue to surge, medical professionals say one of the hardships has been the transition to telemedicine. One of the problems is that some seniors don't have access to smart devices or know how to use one.
Each device comes with a tech support manual and a resource guide.
Telehealth Access for Seniors, a nationwide organization started during the pandemic, says older patients tend to be more vulnerable, especially those with chronic health conditions. By giving them access to appointments and checkups from home, the organization believes patients will be protected from possible complications and unnecessary hospitalizations.
I personally have a family friend who has been battling cancer for like 2 years now, and she has to be in constant contact with her oncologist, and it's hard, during this COVID pandemic to go to a medical facility.
State lead Leanne Jong says they are also trying to get front camera enabled devices into low income communities. Volunteers are working with free clinics and veteran hospitals to find patients in need of the used devices.
But also to connect with your families and friends for stress relief, or just to talk about your situation, relieve anxiety, has been very beneficial.
Jong says the organization is fundraising in case they don't collect enough devices. She hopes to get them into the hands of patients by the end of summer. Jong says the organization is trying to raise about $10,000 to buy these devices for people here in Georgia. We have more information on our website, fox5atlanta.com. In Gwinnett County, Brian Hill, Fox 5 News.
Authorities report nearly 3,900 new COVID-19 cases and 37 deaths in Georgia.
All right, guys, once again, that one was coming from our WAGA station, Fox 5 Atlanta. A lot of schools have been giving their updates on COVID-19, especially as we start to look ahead to the fall semester. And many of the teachers urging for officials to continue doing remote learning because of the coronavirus pandemic. Later in our stream, we are going to be playing Chicago's Teachers Union as they had a discussion about it. They had an online conference talking about Chicago's school year. Now, one of the other updates that came today was from Dallas County officials. Now, they were discussing the mandate saying no public or private schools in the county will be allowed to hold in-person classes until at least September 8th because of COVID-19. Going to give you that update that happened here just a little bit earlier this evening.
So we'll start right at 6. So we'll hang out for a while. It's my wacky. We gotta catch a break soon because Grandpa needs a haircut for sure. Well, yeah, me and Phil are sporting that 70s look, man. We're the Mod Squad.
All right, guys, just going to try to jump ahead to when they actually started this press conference.
To our local health department to make decisions on delaying school openings. Dr. Phil Huang serves not only as the director of Dallas County Health and Human Services, but also as the health authority for the county. He is the health authority also for all the cities, the city of Dallas and all the other cities, with the exception of Garland and Richardson, who have their own health authorities, but who are going to work closely with us in this endeavor. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Huang in a moment to explain to you the decision-making process and his decision to delay in-person opening of schools. A decision that is not an easy one, but one that I and the vast majority of people that we have spoken to today agree with. I want to commend Dr. Huang for being very collaborative in this very brief time that we've had this power with our Dallas County Health and Human Services, less than 24 hours, in fact. He's talked to a lot of people, and I want to pledge to you that we're going to be even more collaborative in the future. I've reached out to teacher groups and principals and other groups, and we want to hear from everyone because this is not a one-time decision. There will have to be decisions made. Unfortunately, with the situation that we have here in Texas, there'll be many decisions to be made as far as what is in the best interest of our kids. We have put together a committee. The committee is yet to meet, but the committee will be chaired by an eminent child psychologist. We recognize this is more than just keeping teachers and students physically safe, that the COVID is taking an emotional and psychological toll on your kids, that there's a challenge with nutrition, safety. There are special populations, special needs, and other populations that must be thought about, and I pledge to you, we will spend hours a day working to make sure all those populations have the best outcome that they can have. Here's Dr. Huang to explain to you the decision-making thus far and where we are.
Good evening. As we always start these things, we are today announced 1,027 new cases, so we've got 37,996 reported. We've had reported 16 new deaths today, which is tied for the third highest number in a single day of deaths that we've reported. And it's in that context, really, that we've been looking at this issue. We've seen record numbers of emergency department visits, hospitalizations, ICU admissions in Dallas County over the last week or so. So, given these numbers, it's really imperative that we do what's best for the safety of our school children and our school employees. This afternoon, as the judge mentioned, we actually had a Zoom call with almost all of the superintendents of all the public, private, and charter schools across the county to discuss students returning to campuses for in-classroom learning. We discussed in depth, really, the challenges that schools are currently facing. Many expressed concerns about reopening their classrooms for in-person instruction and the safety of teachers and staff and students. So I'm issuing this public health order today that delays in-person instruction for all local public and private schools until September 8th, 2020. Now, this order allows schools to begin remote instruction on schedule. Instruction begins. So I think those are the main things about this. Again, as the judge mentioned, there are a lot of different issues related that we recognize. It's a hard decision. We heard the comments from the superintendents and took them to heart, but we feel that this is what's best for the safety of our children and staff in schools at the present time. So open it up for questions.
Questions, anyone?
Say that. Summer camps? The question was about summer camps, and so it would be all school-sponsored events and activities. So if they're sponsored by schools or school systems, then those type of activities fall under this order.
Right.
When you say that the schools are going to have to submit a plan prior to reopening, can you elaborate on that? Who's going to be examining that plan? Is there going to be approval or disapproval process?
So the statement, it says that they'll develop a written plan for resuming on-campus instruction and extracurricular activities, and they submit that to the local health authority, which is me, and make the plan available for parents and general public. So we will review those plans and provide feedback and approval, essentially.
What is the situation would need to be then in order for you to feel comfortable, confident of the students returning back to school? What if we're still where we are right now? I mean, we got to be optimistic, but what if?
So so the question is, are we confident that September 8th is the magic number date to return, sort of something like that, or?
Sure. Yeah. What if we're still looking at the same amount of COVID-19 cases we're seeing now?
Sure. The question is, what if we're still looking at the same numbers as right now, let's say September 8th? And as this order goes until September 8th, because given the data and where we are now, we don't feel that it's safe until that time. It's not, as the judge mentioned, there will be advisory group that's being convened to then look more closely at all of the issues, make further recommendations, and also we'll have time to see how the numbers progress, how the spread continues in the community. If it slows down, that will be good, and it'll be part of the information then to make further decisions. So this only goes until September 8th, but as we talked with the superintendents, it's recognizing, that things may change, and we'll also get this added input from these advisory groups.
What kind of implementations are you looking for in those plans, right? When they submit those plans, what exactly are you looking for to say, yeah, this is good stuff?
All right, guys, and like I said, we did have a lot of schools updating everyone on their reopening plans. Going to take us out to DC next.
In the district, a focus on public education. We are located in council chambers at 441 Judiciary Square. I want to thank the members of the press and all of the people watching for your patience this morning. We had some updates that we wanted to make sure were absolutely right in presenting to you this morning. Today, we are planning to make an announcement about the upcoming school year, and we will get to that in just a moment. As you know, we continue to monitor our COVID-19 data very carefully. In this morning, we reported 50 new cases of COVID-19 in the district, and sadly, 3 lives lost. And here are the other points that you are familiar with watching that Dr. Nesbitt and her team monitor carefully. And we'll ask Dr. Nesbitt to talk a little bit about that data in a moment. But I wanted to be here to share with families, students, and staff information about the upcoming school year. And today we will talk about the upcoming school year, but not the way we expected to be able to talk about it this morning. We know that the situation with this virus is changing and has been volatile. And this week especially, we saw some trends in our data that are not ideal for making plans for the remainder of the school year. So we're going to watch that data very closely over the next 2 weeks and delay our decision about the upcoming school year until Friday, July 31st. We, however, wanted to talk largely about what the Chancellor intended to talk about today, because if we are able, and the health indicators allow us to, on July 31st, we will present several options for DC parents. And we're going to talk about those options in some detail today. Let me also say that we continue planning for our Summer Bridge program. And we have made the decision to make the Summer Bridge program an online program for 3, 6, and 9th graders. And that program begins on August 10th, and already over 3,000 families have signed up to participate in the summer program. So before I turn to the Chancellor to talk more about the options that we hoped to be able to offer our families, and that decision we will make on July 31st, I want to go back to the metrics for Dr. Nesbitt to walk through.
Sure, and thank you, Madam Mayor. So overall in the district, we're in a good place. We've been able to have things like our positivity rate be at 3% or below days or on a weekly average. Our hospital capacity remains in a good place, consistently at 80% or below. And our COVID-related hospital admissions have not been increasing, unlike many states. Our contact tracers, we have a well-resourced, well-staffed contact tracing and disease surveillance operation at DC Health, where we're able to make contact with many of our positive cases, as well as the close contacts that they report. We have a number of other internal metrics that look at in terms of the percentage of interviews that we complete, as well as the number of contacts that individuals report, and all of those things are promising for us. However, there are 3 metrics that are of concern for us right now with our community conditions that have led to the recommendation, and as the mayor has reported, the decision that we want to revisit related to schools on July 31st. Those things are related to the rate of transmission, or the low transmission rate as pictured here. R0 or RT has been above 1 for the last few days, or last several days, and we want to have the opportunity to monitor that and see if it will decrease below 1 as it had been for the last several weeks. The other thing is that as we moved into reopening, we expected to have new cases. And that is because as there are more activities in the community for people to participate in, and the aggressive messaging of making sure that people wear their mask, that they stay 6 feet apart, that they choose which activities that they're going to participate in wisely, there may still be some activities as people are reoriented in the community and making those wise decisions. However, the amount of community transmission and community spread that we have at this point, and our inability to consistently see declines in new cases and community spread is not where we would like to be at this point. And so additional couple of weeks of observation would be beneficial. And the third thing that we want to continue to keep our eyes on for the next couple of weeks is how connected the new cases we see are. I'm asked here times, is there an absolute number that you're looking for? And that's a difficult question to answer because 30 cases means different things based on the context of those cases. 30 cases that are not connected is different than 30 cases that occur as a cluster or related to a specific event. And right now, we don't have enough of our cases or a high enough percentage of the cases in the district that are being connected to each other, either by a single case, contacts being connected, or a particular location. So those are the metrics that we look at. Some of them are presented on the dashboard for folks to be able to follow along. Some of them are metrics that we look at internally as public health professionals and dentists, and they all help us paint a good quantitative and qualitative picture of the community conditions here in the District of Columbia. But I do want to reiterate that overall, out of the global set of metrics that we look at, both posted on the dashboard and those that we review internally, the district still is in a good place. As it relates to our picture related to COVID-19. We still do need everyone to continue to do all of those things like wear your face mask, keep 6 feet of distance from others, choose your activities wisely, wash your hands, stay home if you're sick, all of those good preventive measures so we can keep moving our health indicators in the right direction. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Nesbitt. And I also want to recognize our public education team who joined us this morning, Deputy Mayor Paul Kine and Chancellor of DC Public Schools, Louis Farabee, both who have been working very hard with our education leaders across the city. So now I want to turn to the chair to talk about DCPS's planning.
Thank you, Mayor. For months, public schools has been collaborating with our students, staff, and families to better understand some of our opportunities and successes as relates to the spring posture of learning at home and how we might approach a successful opening to the 2021 school year to start strong. We spent months gathering data through our surveys, our focus groups, and we had the opportunity to hear from over 17,000 voices among our students, staff, and families. And what we heard is there's a need to ensure that there is a consistent and easy to follow schedule for families, and we are prioritizing safety. Safety will be paramount in all of our scheduling to ensure that there are robust protocols to maintain healthy conditions in our schools. We also heard the need to ensure that we continue to maximize learning. We know that the optimal learning experience for students is in-person instruction, and we intend to maximize that with scheduling that promotes the safety protocols that were referenced earlier. To do that, we are cohorting students into groups so we can maintain successful distancing and also to ensure that we can do appropriate contact tracing. And point, and it's represented in the data, is our commitment to ensuring that we're maintaining equity and access. And that means ensuring students have access to devices and supplies to have a successful learning experience. So to do that, we are offering choice. And one of the things that was reflected in the data as well is to ensure that families who want to have in-person instruction have the ability to choose a hybrid model, and then also the ability to offer a virtual-only instructional model for those students who have experienced success in a virtual-only option and would like to continue that for the 2021 school year. So what I'll walk you through what that will look like for all of our grade levels as we have prioritized learning at home for all of our students who need that, but also to maximize instruction in person with a particular leaning towards our earliest learners. We're also prioritizing students that may have special needs, students that may have individualized educational plans, or other unique services that may need to be provided in person that cannot occur in learning at home. So for our earliest learners, students that are pre-K3 and pre-K4, we'll be providing an opportunity to have cohorting in two ways. There will be a group that will be on Monday and Tuesday, and then there'll be another group on Thursday and Friday, which will be our B group. Threaded throughout all of our models, Wednesday will be a virtual day and will also be a day that we'll have deep cleaning in our buildings. As we turn to K through 5, there's a similar structure. However, for K through 5, you see that there is a virtual only option for families Monday through Friday. And again, you see the same elements, that Wednesday is a virtual only day for deep cleaning, and then there's a group for Monday and Tuesday, and group B for Thursday and Friday. As we transition to our secondary level, it'll look a little bit different in terms of the number of days that we'll be offering in-person instruction. You can see for our students of grades 6 through 12, there'll be 1 day of in-person instruction as the anchor, and then we'll have our virtual only option for students 5 days a week. And then Wednesday will be our day for only for all students and deep cleaning. It's important to note that those students that are in education campuses where they're being served in a pre-K through 8 grade level model, students will work on the model for elementary students for K through 5. And those students that are again in 6 through 12 will operate from the current schedule presented, which is 1 day of in-person instruction and 4 days of virtual instruction. We have created this model to ensure that we are nimble and flexible, so should we need to move from an all virtual structure to a hybrid approach, we have the ability to move back and forth. And also, we are giving families the ability to choose from these two options relates to hybrid learning and learning at home.
So I think that's the basics of what we talked about, and there's more to the discussion from DCPS's standpoint about how schools are being readied, protocols at schools that we will use the time between now and the 31st to talk with families in town hall sets about what all of those protocols are. And Chancellor, you may be able to address some of that if there are questions today. So with that, we'll take questions. Yes, Julie?
As you're announcing this plan, but also saying you're going to wait until the 31st, does this mean that this may not be the plan? There might be.
That's correct. It means that on the 31st, depending on health indicators, we could decide that we're only going to be able to start the school year virtually and may move throughout the school year to another option. It may mean that we have determined that the trends that we for the last week don't persist, and we are able to offer an all virtual option or a hybrid option where the students would come in on the various days that you just saw and learn virtually for the balance of the week. Yes.
To what degree does the federal government's insistence that in-person continues have on the decision?
It has no impact on our decision. We are driven by this value, and that is that children better in-person, face-to-face learning with teachers in their school buildings and with their peers. So we have worked very hard to make sure that we have options available for families where that can happen, as long as our experience with the pandemic allows it. And what we're saying today is that we need more time to observe what's happening with the virus, and we will make that determination on July the 31st. Also, just logistically and operationally, the school system will need at least that much time to prepare for the new school year. That's why we picked that date. Yes.
A question for Dr. Nesbitt. Are you considering any interventions? I know you said in a June 5th press conference that you showed a sheet that said you would consider possible interventions if 3 days of new cases were higher than day 0 on referring to community spread. And looking at it, it looks like we had 3 higher on day 0, which is 44. And so I'm wondering, right now, your concerns over these 3 metrics, are you recommending interventions?
Right, so that just happened today, right? So so what we do is we actually look at if we can make any connections around what those cases are. And what we're still observing is that there are no real observable connectivity or trends in our cases, so we're not seeing clusters associated with any particular location or any types of venues. So it makes it very difficult to make a recommendation or for a specific intervention on a specific sector at this point. What we will do at DC Health is over the next couple of days is continue to mine the data, continue to look at the cases that have happened during that symptom onset picture period to see if we can paint a more specific picture that helps us make recommendation for interventions. And if we can identify something that we can say is the source or the reason why those cases are happening, we will be able to make a recommendation for a specific non-pharmaceutical intervention. But writ large, what we continue to see is that the cases are happening widespread across the community with no real level or sense of connectivity.
Yes.
Mayor Messer, what impact did possible protests by teachers cause you all to delay the school's announcement and also the walkthrough this morning at Maury Elementary?
What second part of your question?
The walkthrough at Maury Elementary.
What about the walkthrough?
What impact did possible protests by teachers play a factor, if any, in delaying the school's announcement and also some of the walkthrough this morning?
Well, none. Actually, and the Chancellor Farabee will have been, I have found our conversations with teachers to be productive. They are educators, and so they know better than most the value of children being in school with their peers and with their teachers. And I think that we are all working in an unprecedented situation to make sure that teachers, and students, and families are confident in their learning environment. So I think that was a very I think we've had fruitful conversations. And with regard to Maury, let me apologize if any of you were inconvenienced by that. And the school, we want to show you how we're distancing in schools and preparing for parents, and we can still do that. We needed to be here today. Yes.
Chancellor Farabee, could you expound a little bit more on this plan to open schools for 2 days, close for a day of cleaning, then have some digital learning during that time, then reopening schools for another 1/3 of the students? It seems somewhat convoluted to people who aren't professionals. How does a working parent or guardian schedule his or her work days with wherever they work if their kids are home some days and not home some days? It seems quite convoluted for parents to figure out.
Yeah, ideally, we would have all 5 days of in-person instruction available to families, and that would obviously be the most convenient way for families to plan. However, we know that there isn't a clear path for us to have all of our students in the building 5 days a week and still maintain the protocols that we've established that represents the guidance that we receive from DC Health and also represents guidance from the CDC. And so given the guidance that we receive, we know that face coverings, social distancing are effective in reducing infections. And to maintain that, we know that we need to limit the number of students in the building together at one time and also have proper cohorting. And to do that, we can only have a portion of students in the building. And this schedule represents the maximum amount of students that we would have in the building at one point in time. For example, it represents a ratio of about 12 individuals in a classroom, So you can have what you might have on a traditional operation. And so given that, we know that we have to put students in cohorts, and cohort A would represent about 50% of the students that are in-person instruction through the hybrid model, and then cohort B would represent the other 50%. And we believe that's the best way to maximize in-person learning, but also maintain safety as a key priority.
Thank you very much. My only concern, if you are a parent or a guardian and you have an elementary school student, a middle school student, and or a high school student, the 2 days in which they might be going to school could be significantly different. And you have a job you have to go to every day.
Yeah, we would prioritize in this process, if families give us their intent that they would like to have instruction on the hybrid model, to prioritize sibling preference. And we've done sibling preferencing in other areas as well to ensure that we can make those schedules as convenient as possible for families who have siblings across grade levels.
Yes, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jane Rucker from Washington County Magazine. Dr. Nesbitt, it seems like you do have a robust group of contact tracers that are very effective in getting in touch with people. However, it's still taking 5 days to get test results back. That's 5 or 10 days that those contact tracers can't reach out to the contacts of positive individuals. So I know you've said in the past, there's nothing the district can do about that. It's because the labs are overwhelmed. But is the speed in which you can get test results a metric that you're following in terms of, looking forward to further reopening and whether we need to start rolling some of these things back?
Yes, we look at turnaround time for the city overall on a daily basis. Today it's around 3.87 days. 3.87 days is the citywide turnaround time.
Okay. Who hasn't asked a question? Mark?
So is in-person optional for every student? What is the option parents would be faced with? Would they be able to choose either to send their kids in for a hybrid or all virtual learning? That'll be every student will have that choice?
On July 31st, we will know if we are able to make that option available. So we will report to you whether we're going to have a virtual environment to start school, or if we will be able to offer all virtual. That will always be an option. Or if we're able to add option of hybrid, that you come in for a couple of days or you come in for 1 day, depending on your grade level. And then your question is a good one, if we will be able to support hybrid for everybody who wants it. And that is our goal. It is only limited by our staffing concerns. And I can't answer that question until we know what the health data say, and then we know what parents want. So on July 31st, if we're able to offer the hybrid, we're then going to ask parents to register and then match that with our staffing availability.
And so just to clarify, virtual learning, regardless of what the data show going forward by July 31st, virtual learning would be an option for every single student?
Every student. And if you could go back to slide 7, we'll show this, that there will always be a virtual option. And actually, if you could go to, let's start with slide 9. And you see the bottom row is the all virtual group of kids. So parents who elect all virtual. You see that through K through 5. And you also see that in 6 through 12. And all virtual, virtual is not an option for our youngest learners, pre-K 3 and 4.
It is not an option.
Okay, and then what are the options for the teachers and staff? Can they opt out of in-person classroom work if they either feel it's not safe for them because of their own underlying health conditions?
Well, that's a kind of a premature question right now, Mark, because we're not there with knowing what we're going to be able to offer, but we will say that on July 31st. And second, we don't know how many parents and children are going to opt in person. And so when we know that, we will know the parent preferences and teacher preferences. But we also have available COVID-related leave for all of our employees.
That's paid leave?
It is.
And then if I could ask one more question about sports. Have you made a determination about contact sports, if they will resume, if school resumes? Will we have football, basketball?
Actually haven't talked about it, but I'm just going to, it's not our first priority, unfortunately. Yes.
Mayor, I don't know if this is for you or for Deputy Mayor Kine, but I've heard that in the charters who educate almost half the kids in the city are sort of looking at you to find out kind of what you're going to do with DCPS so they can either follow suit or maybe not. But the question is there any direction at this point, suggestion, anything with respect to the public charter school?
Sure, I'm going to ask Paul to weigh in. It is true, DCPS has about 50% of the kids, and the balance of DC kids are in how many different charters? Over 60 different charters. So imagine if everybody had a different schedule. We think it's best if people have a similar schedule, and if they go back to one of the scenarios that are outlined on slides 8 through 10. If we all were to do that, either the campuses would be all virtual or have some in-person learning and some virtual learning. So we think that the charters will fall in one of these scenarios, and I'll ask Paul to comment more.
Yeah, as a city, we are very much all in this together, and I think demonstrated that throughout the spring, which has seen unprecedented levels of collaboration across all our public schools, with our families, with our educators, with our health experts. I meet with the leaders of all the charter schools at least twice a week. We have conversations about their learning and understanding from their communities. We share data and information. We convey all of the scientific evidence that we have available to us. We make DC health officials regularly available to leaders of our schools. And together, we have worked on developing these recommendations and these schedules and these scenarios. Each charter has the ability to make its own decision about what its schedule is going to be. At the same time, many charter leaders have conveyed they are interested in working together and collaboratively with DCPS and with the city on these schedules. So I know that the message we have for charter leaders today is we need to hold off and wait as we follow the data and information coming from DC Health. We assume that many will follow suit. And at the same time, we know that they put the best interests of children and families first, as does DCPS. So we can expect, I think, very similar outcomes from our own deliberations.
I do know, though, that KIPP says that they are going to be starting their school, at least that's their plan, the 21st of August as opposed to, I think the DCPS plan is the 31st, if I'm not mistaken. So there could be obviously changes there, right? Differences.
Yeah, there are very possibly going to be some differences. The vast majority of charter LEAs have indicated to me they're planning to start their school year on the 31st. KIPP is a very good example. They're beginning their school year, but they are bringing in individual students and small cohorts, and will begin also some regular instruction around the time that PS does. And you'll see that for all of the large charter LEAs who are planning on August 31st as well.
So finally, Mayor, the way I get it is basically you're suggesting the charters just do what DCPS in a general way. Is that correct?
I always think that's a good idea, but they always tell me it's up to them because they're independent LEAs. And so we respect their decisions. Many of them work with their boards. I take the approach that they're all ours. So it really matters not to me whether they're DCP public charter, or families want to know that there is clear reasoning behind decisions made, and we've worked collaboratively with them. DC Health has worked collaboratively with them, and we just want families to have the best information. Yes.
What is the COVID rate or benchmark or threshold to make a determination for in-classroom instruction? For example, if the rate drops by July 31st, will the students and staff be in school?
So Dr. Nesbitt talked to you about several indicators that presented as concerns for us this week, and we will continue to follow those. Yes.
Another question on education. Last I heard, there were, was it 10,000 devices to students in need and 4,000 spots. I wonder if you've done an audit to check in if any more students, need devices so they can do distance learning.
Thank you. We have done some assessment over the summer to ensure that every student who is engaged in our summer learning has access to a device if they need a device. We also had students keep their devices if they're engaged in summer youth employment as well. A part of the registration process will also include an opportunity to families to share if there is a need for a device in the home. We're also in the process of procuring additional devices, so we'll have additional devices as we prepare to open the 2021 school year. We'll have approximately 36,000 devices. We distribute over 10,000 devices in the spring of the 2019-20 school year, and we also distribute about 5,000 hotspots. The new devices that we will have for the 2020 school year will be LTE enabled, so that allows us to eliminate the need for additional hotspots. And we have the capacity to provide internet access with those devices should family need internet access as well.
So to be clear, internal audit, your understanding is like of the 50,000 students who are that every student who needs a device has a device, or?
That is always the plan, that every student who needs a device, we're providing a device, and that was our posture in the spring and has been our posture over the summer. And we're preparing and procuring devices so we can continue that into the 2021 school year.
Another question for Dr. Nesbitt. I know the American Clinical Laboratory Association, which I know LabCorp is a member of, has said publicly that they're having significant supply challenges. Obviously, you've discussed this during press conferences. They also are asking providers to prioritize testing for those in need. I wonder if that is going to change the way that DC providers, or are you changing the way that we do testing based on the significant supply challenges that private labs are experiencing?
So you'll recall that we used to present to you all a priority list, right? And no one really grasped that. And then we had people sort of get oriented to this, work with your doctor to determine if you need a test. And now we communicate to people, if you need a test, get a test. And most people interpret that to mean I want to get tested, and therefore I go to get tested. And so what many of these laboratories are trying to communicate to people is that the diagnostic tests that are broadly available are intended for people who have a reason to need to be tested. So there are, in some communities, and I don't believe that it is happening here in the district, some communities where people want to be tested and they go to be tested, which puts stresses on the availability of supplies, whether it be the swabs, whether it be the vials, whether it be the reagents in the laboratory, that are contributing to some of these long wait times for results. What we understand happens in the district often is that people who are going to be tested are people who have symptoms or asymptomatic individuals who have had an exposure. And so those are people who are appropriate for testing, who have had consultation with their healthcare provider, or who have been advised to go get tested. So you will see in some communities where when the wait times are long enough, they are going back to prioritizing who should be tested and advising that clinicians who are making the decisions around testing prioritize those individuals so that you don't have really sick people who the clinicians and the public health professionals who are making decisions around the public health management and the clinical management of individuals are not getting results, where people who have the desire to know their status but no known exposure, no symptoms, are getting ahead of them in the queue for a COVID test.
All right, you're listening to Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser and Schools Chancellor Louis Farabee and the rest of the staff there talking about what's going on with COVID-19 and the school system and how they're going to handle the fall. As of right now, they're still keeping an eye on the situation because they've seen some trends that they're really concerned about, and they just want to keep an eye on at this point. So it says on July 31st, which is a Friday, is when they will firm up this plan that they just got finished discussing. And part of the plan, like many other school districts in the area, involve some of the students being at home, virtual learning, and some being actually at the school. There are a couple of different plans that they talked about here. Just mention a couple of them. The pre-K plan, third and fourth grade, pre-K 3 and 4 group comes into the school Monday and Tuesday. And then another group would come in on Thursday and Friday. Wednesday on these plans would be the cleaning day and all virtual for the school system. K through 5 virtual only option is available, again, with the groups, and Wednesday being the cleaning and the all virtual day. And 6 through 12, 1 day in person, virtual option is available. And again, Wednesday is that day for cleaning. This has not been finalized. It's very important to note this is not a done deal just yet, because they still have to monitor the situation and see what's going on with COVID-19 before they make a final plan. And based on that, how much staff they will need, where they need to place people, how many parents are going to sign up for virtual, how many they're coming. There's a lot of factors involved in this. She also said, someone asked about sports. She said, gotten to that yet, because really at this point, that's really not a priority. Holly.
You know, Wisdom, I know a lot of parents and teachers as well and kids were hoping to get a definitive answer today, and they weren't able to give because of, like you said, there's some areas of concern. Overall, D.C. is doing very well in terms of COVID-19. It's hovering around that 3% positivity rate. But there are 3 areas they've seen some concern in just the last couple of days. It's the rate of transmission, the community spread, and the connectivity of cases. There were 50 new cases reported as of today, and unfortunately 3 deaths. And so since we've seen the coronavirus surging in other parts of the nation, where they come out with a concrete plan, they really just want more time to watch and see what the trend is. The bottom line, though, Wisdom, is virtual learning, be it 5 days a week, 4 days a week, 2 days a week, 3 days a week, it's going to be a part of the fall learning system for all of DCPS. And they also commented on the fact that the charter schools, which account for about half the students in D.C., also are waiting to give word, but they are waiting to see what DCPS is before they go ahead and make decisions. So the uncertainty continues, really.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And as far as devices are concerned, Chancellor Farabee said they have plenty of devices. They have devices for everybody, 36,000 devices, 5 hotspots. So, I mean, this is a situation that all school districts, all of the country are dealing with. So it's just a matter of how each district is handling it based on what's happening in their particular area. But like you just said, this distance learning, the way things will probably be until we know better with this virus, at least until vaccine, and then there's trials. You know, that's a whole nother process that we don't have time to get into at this point. But yeah, this is the way from now until further notice.
Hi, everyone. I'm Frank Malicote, anchor for KTVU Fox 2 here in the San Francisco Bay Area. My guest is the co-founder. He's also the managing partner of Above Vacation Residence. It's a high-end hospitality. It's based in Austin, Texas, and it's a company that has had to make a few changes along the way with our COVID-19 world. And let's say hi to that co-founder, Brian Sabraco. Brian, how are you?
Doing great, Frank. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you. Well, out of the gate, want to give our viewers an idea of what you folks do.
You know, so imagine this. If you're sitting on a really incredible luxury home and you don't spend as much time there as you do, we're a company that comes in there and says, oh, you're sitting on this great home. Would you mind renting it out to some pretty nice high-profile groups or high-profile families? And we'll return the home right back the way you found it. So imagine your primary residence starting to produce revenue for you. And that's where we found ourselves several years ago, begging that question, and it has just taken off since then.
And you started, I guess, with a handful of homes, and where are you now?
We did. We started, actually, we tested it because we've been in the hotel business for quite some time, my wife and myself. Grew up in that industry, so it was a natural progression to go from hotels and resorts and venue centers to our customers were asking something a little bit more unique, and homes seemed to fit that. And we test marketed my own home, and from there convinced a few family friends in the neighborhood around to see if they would like to do that. And from there, we've never spent $1 marketing to any of our homeowners, and it's just been word of mouth, and we're just approached 60 luxury estates here in the Austin area and expanding to Colorado, Nashville, Charlotte, and even Kohler, Wisconsin for the 2021 Cup.
Oh, very good. Yes, the golfers need a place to stay, that's for sure. And you not only, rent out these homes to higher end folks, you kind of cater to their whims as well. I mean, this is unlike VRBO. Tell us some of the other things you do.
We love friends at VRBO and Airbnb and the like, but they're incredible platforms to find our homes. But truly, if you could imagine, I grew up I had the best blue degree by working for Hyatt Hotels and Resorts for 15 years. I had the honor of working for them and bounced around the entire country with them. Really spending most of my time in the high-end luxury resort side. So I don't know how to do anything different than that. So you can imagine coming to a spectacular luxury home, but have every amenity and service that you had at that Five Diamond Resort, from concierge, housekeeping, chefs, massages, welcome amenities, butler service.
I'm in.
That's what we do best.
And you go right down to the thread count of the sheets, this is the towels. If they give you a laundry list of things that we would like set up, you do it.
That's what we do. We're here to serve.
Okay. Well, now that we know what you do, how has your world changed? I would imagine out of the gate back in March and early April, this turned upside down a little bit because
well, you can imagine
you're all at home.
If you look at one seminal moment that happened, look at South by Southwest, one of the most fantastic for years in the Bay Area. South by Southwest is the pinnacle of where Twitter was announced, right? It shut down right there in mid-March, and the bottom fell out. We were having an incredible year. March dissolved, April disappeared, and May was probably about 80% down year over year. We believed in the model, and belief, wonderful, maybe it's what's the right word I'm looking for? It's probably the next best thing to hope. When we hoped that our model made sense, that boy, even in a pandemic, people may get tired of their own four walls. Maybe they want to control their own environment and not have to share a lobby of a hotel or share an elevator with someone, but actually invite who they want to come down, maybe those people who have been quarantined with them, and enjoy something a bit different. And boy, that belief turned into fact. When we hit May 1, looking at it, going, oh boy, I instantly saw a turnaround as the country began to reopen, especially as Texas began to reopen. We finished May 240% above 2019. And this month of the July will be over 400% higher than it went. And it has a lot to do with controlling your own environment. Of course, COVID changed so much. Thank God I had this great degree when it came to Hyatt and their cleaning standards, obviously partnering with the best. I looked at the chemicals and the disinfectants that we were using and the housekeeping and how hot the water is and everything for every sheet and towel. And we looked at all of that and said, boy, we're partnered with the right companies. This is everything on the CDC website we were using, but we began to redo our checklists and how much high traffic areas, even brought in a company that fogs homes, that actually completely affects what they use in operating rooms, right? So making not only my guests feel super comfortable, but my homeowners, when they come home, just as comfortable as well.
Well, I would imagine, did you lose some of the homes? Because as a homeowner, do you want to rent your place out under these conditions?
You know what? It was a big concern. As you're sitting there staring at the abyss going, the customers aren't coming, and are my homeowners going to want to do this? Right. We have gained 9 homes since March, just in the city of Austin.
Wow.
So many of our homeowners have another home to go to. So They are understanding. Obviously, when the CDC announced I think it was around mid-May, that it's very difficult to catch COVID surface-wise, right? Yeah, it's mostly transmitted person to person. That obviously was helped hotels as well as companies like myself, and gave reassurances that as long as we're washing hands and the right things the CDC asks us to do, we're going to be okay. Just what we want to be careful is spreading person to person.
And did you have to step up protocol a little bit, the cleaning protocol in light of going on?
Absolutely.
In a big way, right? I mean, you're bringing fog machines for crying out loud.
Yeah, and even in some places, we're even using some UV light, right, on some smaller areas, surface areas, and different things like that. It really is dependent upon that customization of what my customers are asking for. Of course, we don't sacrifice our own protocols, but we have extra protocols that can be deployed based upon the comfort levels of our guests and our homeowners.
You talked a little bit about your expansion into Colorado, into Nashville, Charlotte, among other places. Has that been kind of put on hold while we kind of get through this, or are you moving ahead?
Let me speak just to Nashville. We went into Nashville right around the holidays, and we signed up about 7 or 8 beautiful estates. And we promised, hey, we're going to be coming in right around May 1 to begin reservations, because you have to bring a team and put a staff in. It isn't easy to transform a luxury 10,000 square foot home to a high-end rental home and then turn it right back to an owner's home. It takes a lot of staff.
Wow.
We had to build that out. And of course, I put that on hold until we found out how well things progress. But we're going to be turning those ones on in Nashville, I would imagine, in the beginning of the fourth quarter.
Wow. Well, you talked about your many years with the Hyatt, 15 plus in sales, marketing, and management. Maybe you can just give us your thoughts. Are you optimistic about hotels in the future and in light of the coronavirus?
It's a great question. I'm not only optimistic, I'm bullish, Frank. The key here is, as great as this technology is, I want you in person. That's hardwired in every human being, every grandma, every grandpa, every mom and dad that can't see their kids right now, can't be together with one night. Every trade show that has a product that needs to be shown, anytime we want to sign a big deal, any of those moments, this is good for now. Not take us into the future. As much as we love to collaborate with one another, and this is a great way to do it for now, the best collaboration has always been done together, right. And we will get back together. Now, how does that look? How are these hotel companies going to fare? Look at a company like mine who is rocketing forward because of my customer can control their environment. Obviously, it's harder to control an environment in a hotel or in a trade show or things like that. But as we have more herd immunity, as a vaccine may be online, or may as this virus, as most do, kind of fizzle out after a while, we're going to be back to doing what humans do best. And that's be us, right? And be with one another. And I'm bullish.
Yeah, amen to I'm ready. I don't mind working from home, but it would be nice to go see all my my colleagues at KTVU. Well, in the midst of all this, you have also launched a charter plane service that is gaining some steam too. Fly above. People don't want to go to airports. They don't want to sit next to Uncle Bob, who is had cold, and you've kind of worked a way around that too. Tell us about that.
I wish I could take this credit for this. That's why it says co-founder. I kind of pick up on other people's really good ideas. This is from my son, Blake. My son, all my boys have grown up in this industry. And growing up in this industry, they get it. And they do lots of different things for this company at the moment. And when this pandemic hit and he's out of school and he's just working from Zoom and going to classes, he's like, Dad, how can we bring the experience that we're providing once they check into one of our homes? How do we get them earlier? How do we get them? Could you imagine if we start showing what we do best the moment they left their house? And that's when he's like, I could go out and look into finding the right to bring them here privately, safely, cleanly, securely, and at that point still be able to bring that level of service that they're not used to yet. And so it got us thinking. And while I was ruminating about this, and along with the rest of our team, went out and got his charter license. And at that point, it began to take hold. As we looked at it, maybe last year in 2019, we did about 25, 30 charter flights that we knew that people were flying in privately to visit our homes. We're doing that about a month now. So we were seeing that not only are we in that luxury category that people can afford that, people are actually looking for ways along those lines to feel more control of their environment.
I bet, and that's fly above, right?
Yeah, it's just that's just what we call it here internally under above. We just call it fly above,
Sure. I always ask our guests to talk about the general area. You're in the greater Austin area. What's it like right now with the coronavirus? Can you go out to dinner? Are you wearing masks? Just give us your take on that.
You know what? What I love about our town is even in an election year, it's all pretty civil. As much as we hear about this camp versus that camp and the division that's happening, what I see in Austin is people just taking care of one another. People are wearing masks because people asked. It wasn't the government that had to really push it. I see people just wearing masks because they think it's the right thing to do right now out of respect for the person next door. I see people in restaurants. I see people in hotels. I see people who are coming, even to when we come and greet guests at our own home, we're masked and gloved out of respect for whatever they believe, right? And how they feel with comfort. And that's something we just don't sacrifice on. And people tend to respect that. The streets are busy, right? It isn't locked down like it was. But the thing that is different is people distancing. Right? People are, conversations are happening a little bit further from each other. We see that. And you know what? That's just where we are today. It is definitely not where we'll be tomorrow.
Well, let's hope not. Brian, if someone wants to get in touch with you or try out your service, how do they do it?
Oh, come on and take a look at it at bookabove.com.
Nice.
Bookabove.com.
All right. Well, Brian, continued success. What a pleasure to have you on. And
thanks for having me, Frank.
I imagine your company will continue to Zoom. Great stuff.
Thank you so much.
All right. That's Brian Sbrocco. He is the managing partner and the co-founder of Above Vacation Residences. Brian, thank you for that. I'm Frank Malakote. If you'd like more, you can go to coronavirusnow.com. Have a great day, everybody.
And don't forget that is the destination to go to anytime you want the latest COVID-19 news. Not only is our stream on there 24/7, but we also have a collection of the latest and top articles happening all across the U.S. Now I want to turn things on over to live look once more here at those latest numbers across the United States. Not only in the U.S. have we had 3.5 million people tested for COVID-19, we've unfortunately had 108,000 who have died from coronavirus. Now on to the good news, we've had more than 1 million people recover from COVID-19. So in the U.S. we've had 1,090,645 according to Johns Hopkins University. And I know there's a lot of focus on the hospitals. It's something our own governor here in Arizona talked about, is the hospitalizations. Oh, pardon me. Sometimes pregnancy, you get these hits of just extreme tiredness, so I apologize about that. Here in Arizona, Governor Doug Ducey was talking about how many people we do have in the hospital, how we're trying to combat COVID-19. In Arizona, we have more than 6,000 in the hospital, but that's not even cracking the top 5 states. Obviously, New York's going to be number 1 because their population size. New Jersey, Florida, though, has 20,000 hospitals. Georgia, more than 14,000. Maryland and Massachusetts both over 11,000. Virginia and Connecticut both over 10,000. Then you have Ohio, which I was shocked to see since I haven't heard as many updates coming from that state. But Ohio does have more than 9,000 who've been hospitalized. Indiana and Alabama both more than 7,000. So once again, anytime you do want the latest COVID-19 news, all you have to do is head on over to coronavirusnow.com. That's where the stream goes 24/7, and you get the latest updates on articles happening across the country. Gonna play Dr. Mike for you. He is from our Fox 29 Philadelphia, and then give you some more directions on where to go when you need the news before we shut things down.
Dr. Mike Sferigliano with Penn Medicine joining us out of Philadelphia. Good to see you, Dr. Mike.
Always a pleasure, Thomas.
Here we are, midsummer. Health leaders, though, are looking ahead and they're warning us to prepare for winter COVID-19. Now, is the worst yet to come?
Well, it is for people like me, Thomas, because what we're going to do in the fall and the winter is add into the mess of COVID, the flu, sinus infections, other kinds of infection. There's a cornucopia of upper respiratory illnesses that usually plague people like me throughout the winter. And then you throw in COVID-19, and what we have now is a partay. Okay, so it's going to be wild, and hopefully everyone will heed our warnings, get their flu shot, so that at least the majority of people will be somewhat protected from the routine stuff like influenza.
A couple of months ago, we were looking at the summer heat possibly to kill the virus. Looking ahead to the winter months, are there concerns that the virus perhaps could last or survive longer in colder conditions?
Well, we know for a fact, Thomas, that the virus does seem to be affected by climate somewhat. What we are concerned, though, typically in the winter, is people being closely associated and indoors in inclement weather. So when it's cold, people tend to stay inside, and that leads to an increased risk of transmission. So that's the theory there. Even though many things have been shut down and we hear about restaurants opening and closing and limitations. Sure. The fact of the matter is that when it's nice outside, lots of people go outdoors. And you throw in the opening of schools, which typically adds to the risk because you have all of these kids intermingling, and then they bring things home and spread viral infections at home. So it's going to be a wild time in River City, I can tell you that.
How are hospitals preparing for a possible second wave?
Well, I think we are better prepared in terms of readiness when it comes to personal protective equipment and ventilators, things to that nature, or things of that nature. The thing is, Thomas, that you can never really be prepared for an ultimate surge. If things get out of hand, no matter what, you can only stockpile and prepare so much before you get over. And so that's where we need to be concerned. The good news is typically things like the flu, other more benign coronaviruses, rhinoviruses, the other typical run-of-the-mill things don't lead to large numbers of people needing ventilator support. So that's good. But I think we'll be more prepared than we were in the springtime, but any system can be overwhelmed.
I know, that's why you stressed the flu shot could help eliminate that stress on the system here. I want to look at a couple of studies that are out. Actually, there are more reports out that show younger people, Dr. Mike, are developing blood clots. What's causing this?
Well, we know for a fact, Thomas, that this virus tends to infect and damage endothelial cells. These are the cells that line blood vessels. And what we think happens is that they damage those cells, leading to an increased risk of blood clotting. Also, when you have lots of inflammatory markers, inflammation in the body, that can also lead to an increase in clotting. And so many people who are hospitalized on ventilators have evidence of microemboli. That's where you have little blood clots in the lungs, and that's thought to add to the pulmonary problems that we see. Some people are being anticoagulated, especially if they were really sick in the hospital for a period of time. I have a number of patients who were very, very ill and put on blood thinners. One in particular had a stroke. Same theoretical concerns. There could be a blood clot. So these people are being anticoagulated and then being monitored even after they are off the ventilator and doing better.
On that note, what exactly is the virus doing to the lungs, and at what point are you placed on a ventilator?
Thomas, what happens with the lungs and this virus, it tends to cause an inflammatory type pneumonia. It's not a bacterial pneumonia. It's not something that's caused by a bacteria. This is purely the virus. And the thought is that there's the initial attack of the virus, but then the body has what's called a cytokine storm. Some individuals, there's a tremendous inflammatory response, and there are characteristic findings on scans of people with COVID-19 pulmonary issues. There is what we call ground glass opacities. You see these changes in the periphery of the lungs, and that is fairly dramatic in some people, and that it leads to low oxygen levels and a significant difficulty in maintaining blood oxygen levels, requiring people to be put on a ventilator.
Oxygen levels, is that what's causing the hallucinations as well? I know hallucinations are also being reported.
Well, hallucinations can be caused by many, many things. We know that the virus can cross the blood-brain barrier and can cause some issues with mentation and even depression. So that's one possibility. The other possibility is that people, when they get very sick, they're in an intensive care unit and they can get ICU psychosis. That's a possibility. But when you do get very low oxygen levels, you also have changes in mental status. So there's a multitude of reasons why people would have changes in their mental status.
We've been talking about testing now for several months. How would you grade, Dr. Mike, our overall testing capabilities right now?
Well, they were a D. I would say that they're at best a C+. All you do on the news is see these lines all over the country where people, it goes for months to be tested. In many cases, it takes up to a week or two to get the results. Now, not to brag, but my institution has been able, when one of my patients is sick and I'm worried about it, I will send them for a test, and not the next day, the results come back. So there are glimmers of hope, and there are institutions and entities out there that are really making it happen. But for the most part, if you go to a location, it may be up to 10 to 14 days before you get a result.
Certainly discouraging in some parts. I know there's been talk in the admission, Dr. Mike, about pool testing. What does that mean?
Well, pool testing, Thomas, is where you can actually get more bang for your buck, if you will. So say you have 100 employees in a factory or something like that. What they'll do is they'll take 10 people at a time and get all of the samples. It wouldn't be for individual people, but those group of 10 will be tested. And if any of them are positive, they will bring those 10 people back and then individually test them. So if they are all negative, then that group moves on. That means the whole group was negative. So it would be a way to more effectively and efficiently test more and more people and in small groups. And then if there is a positive test, go back and individually find out which one of those 10 people were positive. So this might be a way down the road to efficiently and effectively, say, for instance, test a company's employees to see if anyone is asymptomatic and positive.
Interesting. Let's stay on testing for a moment. Is it worth the time right now to get an antibody test when we still don't know about long-term immunity?
Well, I really have gotten to the point where I'm discouraging people from getting antibody tests. I mean, it's one, with all of the most recent data, we don't know how long an antibody will protect someone. And there's some research indicating that it may only be up to 30 days. So we don't know. And my fear, Thomas, is that it may give people a false sense of security. So that's the bottom line.
As we return to work, how concerned should we be about possible exposure through the ventilation systems, the airborne transmission? One Harvard researcher suggested that we should be taking a closer look at our air conditioning in the buildings.
Well, this is a matter of great debate. The World Health Organization basically said, look, we need to look into this some more. There are researchers who believe that the virus can be aerosolized up through ventilation systems. And there are studies of restaurants, for instance, where if you and I are at a table in one part of the restaurant, there have been studies where if one is positive, then that virus gets through a ventilation system and goes and infects people at a table almost into the adjoining room because the ventilation system blows air that way. So there's a lot of gnashing of teeth, if you will, about that. So yes, I think there's lots more to be done in terms of research, looking at how we handle buildings and how we handle people. Now, one of the things that I am experiencing, lots of people are working off-site. Many people, I think it's going to be a permanent change. And that has some pluses to it. One, they don't have to get in a car. They can improve the environment of the planet by decreasing carbon monoxide and all of that by not having to drive and commute to work. So that's one issue. The other issue is we really need to look at how we can do better with air quality in buildings and, for that matter, even airplanes. How can we effectively rid that air, especially if it's recirculated, from circulating virus?
Till we get to that point, let's talk about mask here. I know there's still much debate about whether or not to wear a mask. As we move forward, if everyone wore a mask, Dr. Mike, along with social distancing, how much of a dent would that be?
Tremendous dent in this. Some studies say by as much as 75%. I mean, the bottom line is, Thomas, that if everyone did their duty, in my opinion, wore a mask, believed in the concept that the virus is real, virus is a virus, and if you wear a mask, a well-prepared mask, that being 2 layers of high thread count cotton or different materials, on your face, you reduce the transmission of virus from feet to about 1/2 inches from your nose. So that would be a dramatic improvement. So everyone needs to wear a mask.
As we navigate down this road, Dr. Mike, what's your biggest worry, your biggest concern?
Well, we're seeing my biggest worry right now, Thomas, the fact that many people don't take this seriously. Just yesterday, a patient come in who believes that this is all a hoax. It's not real. It's not, it's fake. It's made up. It's political. And that was me, because people just don't get it. This is a real thing. It is a virus. We are in a pandemic, the likes of which we have not seen since 1918. And the bottom line is we all need to take it seriously, of all ages, of all socioeconomic backgrounds. And if we do it right, we will get through this. But what we're seeing are large numbers of people who don't think that this is the big thing. It's not a big deal, and they're being very cavalier about it, and it's harming people. I had a patient, Thomas, who had a daughter who went to the shore, came back being at a party, and guess what? Her mother now, who is my patient, has the virus. And so that has sent a trickle effect. Now we have to worry about the young person's father. Now we have to worry about everybody that he works with. It goes on and on. There are tremendous ramifications from the actions of a few.
On your previous thought, I'm curious, what did you tell your patient?
Basically, I told my patient that, look, you need to talk to your youngins, if you will, and make sure that they know that if they go away to beaches and parties and things and take this cavalierly, it can have great ramifications. My patient, who's now positive, is self-quarantining for 14 days and checking their oxygen levels and their temperature and calling me every day. If they start to get worse, their oxygen levels go down, then they will be forced to go to the hospital and be monitored and possibly, God forbid, end up on a ventilator. Regarding my patient's husband, who is also my patient, being tested today. This all went down yesterday, and we shall see.
For those who are self-isolating at home, how do they check their oxygen levels?
Well, Thomas, I'm a big fan of these little pulse oximeter devices, which are readily available and very inexpensive. And what you do is you buy them, you put it on your finger, and it measures your oxygen level. Now, they're not 100% accurate, but they give us a good idea where you stand. It's almost like a home blood pressure monitor. And I had 2 patients who were monitoring their oxygen levels. They were going along okay, and then all of a sudden, about 7 days into their illness, their oxygen levels went down. I sent them to the hospital, and they ended up on later that day. They are both alive, Thomas. I believe that saved their lives by doing that. And what happens with this virus, you can go along and appear to be talking and no problems, but your oxygen levels are very dangerously low. So for that reason, I think it's a good idea to not only have a good monitor at home, but also a pulse oximeter, which you can buy at drugstores, online, all over the place.
Could make a major difference. All right, Dr. Mike, our daily advice on staying safe?
Well, Thomas, as we just mentioned, we need to deal with this as we are all one. And by the way, we are. We are all on the planet. We're all dealing with a pandemic, and we're all at risk. And even if you're a young person and you are impervious to all of this, you need to realize that your actions can have serious consequences. So let's take one day at a time. And every day that goes by, Thomas, we're one day closer to a vaccine. And then we can say goodbye to this virus.
Hopefully soon. Dr. Mike Sirigliano with Penn Medicine out of Philadelphia. Good to see you, Dr. Mike.
Always a pleasure, Thomas.
Hello, everyone. Heather Holmes here with KTVU Fox 2 News in the San Francisco Bay Area. And joining us once again is Dr. Rashid Chotani. He is a COVID-19 researcher and infectious disease specialist. Doctor, always a pleasure to have you on.
Well, it's a pleasure to be on your show, and thank you for having me.
Let's talk about what we're seeing. And it really is troubling. A lot of states continuing to see surges in COVID-19 cases.
Absolutely. It's an extreme, difficult thing for anybody in the public health arena or infectious disease arena or medical arena to even think about right now. As we were anticipating that the cases go down, we had, some states that opened up early, some states did in terms of opening according to the plans that we had. But right now, as we see Sunbelt area, the cases are surging like you won't believe it. You take Florida, you take Texas, you take some other states over there, South Carolina. In fact, cases are in California also, where a lot of precautions were taken. But I guess what happened and the lessons that we learned is that you cannot let your guard down. You have to be very vigilant in terms of the precautionary measures they take. And if you don't, the disease was there, is there, and is going to stay with us. So the virus is still circulating. It's in control. We are just not in control, unfortunately.
Yeah, and we were talking about the expectation, and you say, unfortunately, we're going to see cases continue to rise, and we're going to see a number of deaths as well.
Yes, absolutely. What experts are talking and looking at, and, to be honest about it, it's not rocket science. If we are having at least 40,000 cases that we are seeing every day, all the way to 60,000 in some days, that by the end of this month, we should be, expecting about 100,000 cases per day, continuing on the path that we are, the trajectory we are. The number of deaths, yes, they had declined, right? And everybody was going, okay, the most important thing to look at is the number of deaths. Well, guess what? The number of deaths are going up now. The number of hospitalizations are going up now. The number of ICU beds utilization is going up now. In fact, if you take a look at the testing And, we've done a tremendous job as a nation, bumping up how much testing we've done. But guess what? And over 30% of the people that are testing are positive. The threshold, and we've talked about it on this show, was 10%, and the ideal thing was to go below 10%. And at one point, Florida was, I believe, about 8% or even less than that. Now, if 30% of the people are turning positive in Florida, above 30%, especially when we talk about Dade County, you've got a problem, because now the disease is just spreading like wildfire. And how do you control something like? Do we really have? I mean, do we have the flexibility to just open up everything, or do we have to step back and lock down on a few states or few jurisdictions where the virus is just exploding? I mean, it's a huge problem. I believe that we need a national strategy. And, I believe that the national strategy needs to come from President Trump, because otherwise individual states are going to do their own thing. It's just not going to work out. It's just not working right now.
Mm-hmm. And we were talking too about the age of those infected, and we're seeing a lot more younger people contract COVID-19.
Yes, absolutely. And younger people are going to contract the disease. And, if you take a look at the data, yes, those younger people are not necessarily going to get sick, will not need hospitalization, although some have, unfortunately, been hospitalized. Some of them, young age teenagers, as well as people who are in their 30s or 20s, have lost their lives after contracting the disease. So, yes, they are not going to be they're not. We won't get the numbers from them fortunately, as far as deaths are concerned. But when they take us back to their communities, their families, they're going to infect somebody else, their work space. What's going to happen is people who are vulnerable, who are in the age strata,